If you've seen one of my videos before, it was probably something Returnal related. Over the past few years, I've put hundreds of hours into this game, and over that time, it's become one of my favorite games of all time. I've been anticipating Housemarque's next release, and recently they just announced Soros, which would be released in March 20th of next year. During this time, I realized I'd never actually played any other Housemarque game and wasn't really sure what they've worked on in the past. So in this video, I'm going to try to change that. You may have noticed the asterisk on that title card, and if you did, totally great catch. I'm probably going to name this video something super clickbaity like I played every Housemarque game ever created, and that's just not true. If you go to their website, you'll see a bunch of games listed, and then you see a section called Other Games. For this video, I'm not playing any of the games under that Other Games section, so for that, I apologize to any supreme snowboarding fans out there. If this video does really well, maybe one day I'll come back and I will play all those games under Other Games. For now though, I'm going to start with the oldest game released into their newest release, so with that, we'll be starting my journey with Outland. Outland is a 2D platformer Metroidvania bullet hell that was released back in April of 2011. This is actually a game I'd heard about back in middle school when I was watching a lot of Let's Plays. Basically, the main mechanic is you can switch between light and dark energies, which lets you interact with different enemies and bullet types. Thankfully, I still had my old Xbox One, so I was able to buy this game for $10 and get started on my adventure. Outland begins with our character being completely bare bones, no sword, abilities, or form changes. The introductory level teaches me the basic movement like dodging and wall jumping. Thankfully, I get access to the sword pretty quickly, so I have a real way to defend myself from the basic enemies. The tutorial level, Origin, ends with the sequence where I get to play as an upgraded hero from many years ago. This serves as a quick sneak peek for the form swapping puzzles I'll be experiencing later in the game. The last room of Origin will end up being Outland's World Hub. From here, I'm able to access each area one by one, defeating the bosses to unlock the final gate. The general flow of each area is following the guiding light towards upgrades that allow the hero to progress to new areas within that level. These abilities are either movement related, like sliding, ground pounding, charges, or launch pads, or combat based, like overdrive swings, damage absorbing shield shockwaves, or a giant laser. Besides these mandatory upgrades, each area also contains locations where I can upgrade either my health bar or my spirit bar, which is what fuels the combat abilities. Each level also contains a bunch of collectibles named Marks of God, which funnily enough unlock concept art of all things when collected. I was in for a huge shock, however, when I picked up my 16th mark and was greeted with a character upgrade instead. Okay. Earlier, I mentioned the sneak peek at form swapping puzzles. Essentially, the main game really kicks into high gear once I unlock the different energy forms. In the second level, Jungle, I unlock light energy, which allows me to run through blue attacks and kill red enemies. In the third level, Underworld, I unlock the dark energy, which does the exact opposite. This unlocks how creative the energy puzzles can really become, whether it's carefully navigating through dangerous spaces with careful form swapping, covering lasers with a matching color platform, or tight platforming aided by swapping energies to create a landed space below. I really enjoyed this core gameplay mechanic, even if sometimes I opted to damage boost through rather than do it properly. The real highlight of this game for me, however, was the bosses. If I've learned anything from my time spent with Returnal, it's that Housemarque knows how to do bosses. This will turn out to be a theme throughout this entire video, but right out of the gates, Outland absolutely delivers in these fights. The first fight, Golem, is pretty basic, but there were bullet hell sections that felt intense and some light platforming to spice things up. The next boss was the High Priestess, and this is where the bosses become incredible and never look back. Starts out relatively simple, then suddenly I'm thrown into the skies and jumping between platforms while hands reach beneath me and send up massive blasts of energy, forcing me to choose between staying safe or damaging the boss. Mother of Eyes ends up being a boss I can't attack directly, but instead need to do ground pounds on certain markers to reveal a cannon that I can then position to do the damage. All the while the boss is sending out massive webs of orbs that I have to be cognizant of the entire time. My favorite boss, the Winged Serpent, comes next. The first half is an obstacle course, involving platforming while dodging incoming attacks. When I finally make my way onto the Winged Serpent, I have to change forms to attack corresponding weak points while bombs rain down from above, causing absolute mayhem in the fighting space. The final level, Eternity, becomes available only after defeating all of the previous bosses. This section is a true test of what I've learned, forcing me to fight difficult enemies and use my entire kit to navigate puzzles on the way to the final boss, the Sisters. This fight was stunning. I had to destroy crystals that shielded the Sisters, who once vulnerable defended themselves with a litany of defense patterns. I ended up figuring out that going slowly was the best way to do it, since all of my rushed attempts led to premature deaths. When I finally beat this boss, I was absolutely exhilarated. 1 HP. 1 HP win again. Oh, achievement. Overall, Outland is an incredible addition to the Housemarque catalog with a great core gameplay mechanic and amazing bosses. I didn't totally love the Metroidvania aspects. I never really used any of my new abilities to go back and uncover past secrets, but that was just a personal preference. I did think the difficulty curve was really good. I took on a bunch of deaths, but none of those deaths felt particularly unfair or cheesy. I would definitely say that all the things I loved about the game far outweighed the few things I didn't. After finishing each game, I'm going to go ahead and rank them, so for now, Outland is obviously going to take the top spot. I'm also going to showcase how many deaths and the total amount of time each game took me as well. Before we wrap up Outland, however, we do have one more thing to cover. We have to check the concept art. Where do you think we can find that concept art, huh? Probably not achievements. Oh wow, some of these are kind of nuts, no? That's crazy. Help and options? Oh, gallery, here we go. Oh my goodness, look at the concept art. This is what we did it for, baby. I imagine this is the concept art, right? It has to, yeah. With the most important part of Outland finally wrapped up, it's time to move on to our next game, Resogun. Alright, just super quick before we jump back into the video, I didn't realize until I was editing how ridiculous I look in all of the footage for all the gameplay. That's because in my new place, I put my TV way too high on my wall. I'll put a picture somewhere over here on what it looks like. Totally makes sense for how my office is structured. It's great if I'm just like watching TV on the couch back there. But when I'm playing games and you just have the footage of me just like this, it looks ridiculous. That's just how it's going to be. I apologize for that. Hopefully it doesn't offend you too much. I just ask, don't put me on r/TV too high or leave like 1,000 comments about it. So yeah, I mean, with that out of the way, back to the video. Resogun is a shoot-'em-up developed by Housemarque in 2013 for the PlayStation 4. Of all of the games on this list, this is the one I heard the most about for being a very classic Housemarque arcadey experience. I've seen very little gameplay for this game, so I was very excited to go and dive right in. From the main menu, Resogun offers a bunch of different gameplay options. It turns out almost all of these are DLC modes, so the only one I end up actually playing is the arcade mode. I go with the medium difficulty and choose the Ferox ship by chance, which I'm extremely glad I did because I tried the other two default ships at the end of my playthrough and I didn't enjoy their playstyle nearly as much. In the first level, I worked to familiarize myself with the controls and try to learn the game's mechanics. You play as a ship in a circular arena with an objective of destroying all the alien ships while saving humans. Humans are released by defeating specific aliens that are highlighted in green, and humans can be delivered to recovery stations. If you delay in picking a human up, they get abducted by an alien ship. Since this is an arcade game at its core, racking up points is a big proponent of the experience. You gain points from destroying aliens, which also builds up your score multiplier if you perform these kill-ins in a steady stream. Saving humans also provides points towards your score, and reaching certain score threshold provides the player with either an extra life or an extra bomb. Speaking of bombs, I have several weapons and controls at my disposal to survive the alien invasion. I can shoot my basic weapon with the right stick, and this weapon actually gets upgraded throughout the playthrough by finding weapon upgrades. L1 uses the boost, which makes me invulnerable to damage and causing a small shockwave to appear at the end of the boost. R1 uses the overdrive weapon, which is a stronger gun that requires charging and often helps get out of tight situations. The last two at our disposal are the bombs I mentioned earlier. By clicking R2, the bomb clears out the entire arena. However, bombs are as valuable and rare of a resource as lives are. All 5 levels consist of 3 phases. 2 phases where I destroy alien ships and save humans to build up my score, and a final boss phase. I didn't realize this until editing, but there is actually a bar on the bottom of the screen that indicates how far throughout the level you are. I wouldn't say the UI was an issue of mine in this game, but I was definitely more focused on surviving, so I missed a lot of the UI elements like the phase tracker, the marking showing where humans are, and the boss health bars. Speaking of the bosses, once again Housemarque knocked it out of the park. Each boss was unique and required different approaches. The first boss was a giant wheel, where I had to break the outer layers in order to progress closer to the core before finally dealing substantial damage to the middle. The boss of the second level was Alright, this one was also a wheel, but this wheel was different, turning on its side sometimes, and it actually killed me a couple times, while requiring more timing and finesse to preserve my lives. The third boss is a giant cube that split apart and litters the airspace with tinier versions of itself. This boss forced me to weave in between all the tiny versions while trying to get close enough to deal damage to the main body. The fourth boss is this bouncing ball that I have to destroy the outer layer of in order to do damage to the core, all the while missiles that track me are constantly being deployed. The final boss is by far the best and hardest, a snake-like mass that constantly charges me, forcing me to dash back while trying to apply damage as often as possible. There's a phase where it sends vertical lines across the arena where I have to show a little finesse to not get hit, and another phase where it splits apart into a bunch of smaller snakes, causing absolute havoc on the screen. This boss and level in general took me just as long to beat as the first 4 levels combined, so I was beyond elated when I finally took it down. Oh, did I do it? Oh my gosh. Oh. At the end of each level, you get a recap showing what you did, and in one of these levels, I managed to somehow find a secret human. No clue how I did it, or what human it even was when reviewing the footage, but it seems like another cool wrinkle to the experience. Outside of the arcade mode, there's also a ship editor where you can create your own ships or download one from online, as well as a public leaderboard where you can compare your scores globally. I imagine during the peak of this game, this was an awesome challenge to compete against your friends with. All of that said, Resogun was an incredible experience. I'm not even that big of a fan of arcade-type games, and I still had a blast. The controls were really tight, the game flow was right up my alley, and all the dangerous situations kept me at the edge of my seat. The soundtrack was also unreal, and the sound design of when you're killing enemies and the numbers go up was also super satisfying. If I had to choose a complaint, I would say maybe the UI design was a little crazy. There were times where I was focused too much on surviving and I couldn't recognize all the elements, but I could also chalk that up to me not being familiar with the game, and the more you play, maybe you're able to multitask doing both. Overall, loved the game, kept it downloaded on my PS5, and with that, I think it actually takes the #1 ranking spot away from Outland. Along with that, here's also my updated death counter and the timer. And with that, we've now completed 2 games, and we're on to the third one, which is a game I had never heard of prior to this video, Alienation. Alienation is another twin-stick arcade shooter developed by Housemarque for the PS4 in 2016. Prior to doing my initial research for this video, I had heard absolutely nothing about this game, so for this one, I'm going in completely blind. The first option we're given when starting up the game is the class I'd like to play as. After reading through the 3 different options, I opt to go with the Saboteur, mostly because the other 2 seem geared more towards cooperative play rather than a solo playthrough. The game is divided into around 20 different missions where I have different objectives like destroying hives, collecting objectives, or defending beacons. I once again chose the medium difficulty to not drive myself too crazy. Each level is pretty open-ended where I have a marker guiding me towards the objective, but there's a lot of map outside of it. For the most part, this is pretty guided. The class I chose starts with a submachine gun, although I eventually unlock a secondary weapon which can either be a shotgun or revolver, and a heavy weapon which can be rocket launchers, flamethrowers, or miniguns. On top of my weaponry, I unlock skill points that I can use on class-specific abilities each time I level up. My class has a stealth ability that turns me invisible, an energy blade that does damage in a cone in front of me, and a missile strike that wipes out all the enemies in a circle around my character. These abilities can all be upgraded to have more damage, range, or charges. Control-wise, this game follows the standard twin-stick shooting methodology of using one stick to move and the other to aim. I can also dash, akin to Returnal, to help me get out of dicey situations. There's a close-range melee attack that does more damage in the center, and I can also perform an active reload to get right back into the action. As I'm playing through all the different levels, I eventually unlock challenges, which normally consist of surviving in a specific spot for an extended period of time while enemies relentlessly attack. The reward for surviving is usually a strong weapon. Speaking of weapons, I talked to the different types earlier, but this game works in a different way than all the other Housemarque games I've played. All the drops are randomized and you carry your weapons over between missions. Each level I'm always looking for upgrades to my weapon DPS. Each gun can also be rerolled for different attribute values within its base range, and upgrade nodes can be attached to weapons to further increase their abilities. It felt like a pretty confusing system, but maybe I just missed the tutorial somewhere. The enemy types also provide a pretty good variety. You have your basic mobs, ones that dash towards you, the exploding types, etc. The quote-unquote bosses would be jacked up versions of regular mobs with traits assigned to them stam, and fatter health bars. These were almost always optional, with a couple required throughout the game designated as bosses, but this was definitely the first entry of the Housemarque games where the bosses left a lot to be desired. It's also worth mentioning that this game clearly seems built for co-op. Maybe my experience with this game would have been different had I played with buddies on my couch for all of the missions, but there were times where the missions just seemed to drag on for the solo aspect. There were actually a couple times throughout my playthrough where random people joined my lobby and helped me through the mission, and I really enjoyed those moments, honestly. My favorite part of this game was probably the final level, and part of that is because I didn't quite figure out how to level up my guns until right before playing it. I was basically playing handicapped for 95% of my playthrough, and suddenly I was gifted with weapons that absolutely decimated any mob I faced. This new damage output made the game feel a lot faster and tight like Resogun. Once completing this final level, some post-game modes and difficulties were unlocked. Alienation was a solid enough experience, but coming off the backs of Outland and Resogun, it had some unfairly large shoes to fill. I totally blanked on the story until about halfway through, and then even when I did start paying attention, I didn't care so much for it. The online leaderboard seems cool once again, but because I'm late to the party, I couldn't really interact with it much. I bet at its peak, this game is a lot of fun, especially if you're playing with friends, but unfortunately that's not the experience that I got to have with it. I still had a decent time with the game, but ultimately it couldn't overcome my natural dislike of top-down shooters. All that said, I'm going to go ahead and place Alienation at the bottom of my rankings, and I also went ahead and updated the death and timer totals. With Alienation done, it's time to move on to the next game I've heard nothing about. Matterfall is a side-scrolling shooter developed by Housemarque for the PlayStation 4 in 2017. Same as Alienation, I had literally never heard of this game prior to looking up this list, so everything that I'm experiencing with this game is the first for me. Immediately, the first thing I noticed is that the soundtrack is insane in this game. They also introduce a very minimal story, which ultimately doesn't matter much, but still kinda neat, I guess. This game is split into 3 worlds, each with 4 levels. The first 3 levels in each world are side-scrollers that are filled with platforming and enemies. My main controls are shooting, jumping, and dashing. There's also this beam I can shoot that'll either make certain platforms solid, explode bombs, or free civilians. Some civilians will give me new augments to equip when released, which can either be buffs to my core functionalities or new special fires, like grenades or a railgun. Similar to Resogun, going for high scores seems to be where most of the replayability lies. You gain multiplier by killing enemies without taking damage. Bonus points can be earned at the end of the level based on how many civilians were saved and if the level was completed without dying. Each of these first 3 levels teaches the different gameplay mechanics, such as lava fields that can't be dashed through, anti-gravitational sections where the game becomes more vertical than horizontal, and mini-bosses that sometimes pop up. I had a lot of fun navigating through the waves of mobs while dealing with the platforming challenges and searching for civilian upgrades. After completing the first 3 levels of a world, the 4th level is the boss battle. The first boss is the autonomous hunter-killer, which doubles as a mini obstacle course and aim labs, trying to get shots in when possible while dodging all the incoming bullets. The second boss takes place entirely in an anti-gravitational field, forcing me to weave in and out of all of the bullets being sent my way, while also trying to damage the boss's weak points when I can. The last boss was by far the most difficult part of this game. This boss actually forced me to reevaluate my augments to ones more suitable for this fight. It was a brutal mix of dodging bullets while trying to aim at the weak point from awkward angles. The mix of bullets I could dodge and the ones that I couldn't constantly kept me on my toes as well. This was another boss similar to Outland where I felt insane euphoria once finally defeating it. Once beating the game, the hardest difficulty unlocks, and I'm free to replay levels to find augments I may have missed or attempt to beat my previous high scores. I know it feels like I didn't say too much about Matterfall and didn't spend too much time on this part of the video, but it was a pretty short game for reasons I end up finding out later. I still came out of my first playthrough thinking Housemarque was definitely cooking again. Matterfall ended up being a pretty short experience that I enjoyed a whole bunch. So much so that I even kept it downloaded on my PlayStation in case I wanted to try out a speedrun or 2 of it in the future. The story was pretty whatever, the final cutscene being actively bad, but I don't think the game really needed a story, so I'm willing to look past it. I'm also willing to look past the controls. I think the button layout was a little odd, so it took me a while to get comfortable with it, but again, I ended up learning it, so I'm going to say it was fine. The movement and shooting and enemies and bosses especially were all also a blast to play and interact with, so loved that part, and I also thought the challenge level was difficult, but not too difficult. Overall, I'm going to put this above Alienation and somewhere just below Outland in my rankings. I also didn't spend the most time in the world with this game, but for what I paid, I definitely got my money's worth. Next up is the game that I heard the most about and am the most excited about by far, which is Nex Machina. Nex Machina is another top-down twin-stick shooter developed by Housemarque in 2017. If that year sounds familiar, it's because the last game we just covered, Matterfall, was actually released the same exact year. So yeah, turns out Nex Machina was actually released before Matterfall. I've been working on this video one piece at a time, so when I saw the release dates, it just didn't make a whole lot of sense to me, considering the website really makes it seem like Nex Machina came out afterwards. This actually does kind of explain why some of the Housemarque dev names I'd been so used to seeing in credits didn't appear in the ones for Matterfall. Regardless of all that confusion, whenever I would ask which other Housemarque games I should try whenever I was streaming Returnal, Nex Machina was one of the answers that always came up alongside Resogun, so I'm really excited to dive into this game. Immediately, I was off to just the worst first impression. I'm not sure if it's one of my PC parts or how the game was optimized on Steam, but it was an absolute nightmare to get it running. It jacked my OBS up, wouldn't properly fit my monitor, and made my screen go a little darker than it should have been. I probably should have just played this one on my PS5 as well, but what can you do? So if my footage looks a little crazy, I just want to note that I am awful when it comes to tech solutions, and I promise I tried my best. Once I was able to actually start the game, it was an unreal experience. Nex Machina is broken up into 6 different worlds, each with 15 levels. Each level spawns in a wave of enemies, and you don't move on to the next level until you defeat them all. There's different upgrades you can take, like triple dash, weapon spread, and dash explosion, and different special attacks as well. My favorite ended up being the rocket launcher, but I liked using all of them, besides the sword. Each level also includes optional objectives that raise your total score. These include humans you can save, secret exits that can be found that grant more levels in the world, and beacons, disruptors, and visitors that can be destroyed for bonus points. I only managed to find a couple secret exits myself, but it's a cool addition. All of these combined add another fold into the already excellent core experience. Once again, to the surprise of no one, the bosses in this game were absolutely electric. They all had insane bullet hell elements, felt fast-paced, and kept me on my toes the whole time. Even from the first boss, Beamtron, there's already so much happening on my screen, and it only gets more and more insane from this point on. Like, genuinely, all 6 bosses felt like they could have been the final boss in any other game. YetiCon would hang near the top of the screen and send out impossible waves of skulls. Helltron kept me constantly dashing with its close-range efforts. Enforcer Prime gave me stimulation overload with regular mobs spawning while a barrage of bullets were consistently on my screen. Architect forced me to learn the laser patterns while doing my best to keep my damage consistent, and the Supreme AI was a true final boss, combining the best elements from all of the previous fights. A couple of them were made harder by myself due to getting a game over and losing my special weapons, but that only added to the experience. Hey, what's up? Editing Cave here. I've been adding this in because as I'm fixing the script and recording bits about like the bosses for Nex Machina, apparently there is a secret boss at the end of the game. I don't know how you get it. I imagine you have to go through all the secret exits or something, but there's a final boss called Nex Machina that looks absolutely insane. I'm so glad I rewrote this boss part. I was watching a speedrun to get all of the names, and when I skipped to the very end to get the name of Supreme AI, I saw just a boss named Nex Machina that looked insane, and I was so confused. But yeah, this game is even cooler in my eyes. I'm gonna have to go back and figure out how to play and fight that boss. Speaking of game overs, these happen when you run out of lives during a run. You start a playthrough with 3, and if you get hit once without a shield, you lose a life immediately. When you lose a life, you normally drop one upgrade that you can pick back up and respawn in, but with a game over, if you use a continue, you can only pick up a couple of the pool of upgrades. Depending on what difficulty you're playing on, you only get a limited amount of game overs in a single playthrough. Last aspect of this game I'll talk about before the total review is the music. The music in this game is spectacular. I'm obviously zoned into the game for the most part, so I didn't get to truly appreciate it when playing, but while editing and script writing, I found myself bobbing my head non-stop. Absolutely big props to Housemarque on this one. Overall, Nex Machina was such a cool experience that I'm glad I finally got to have. I loved everything about this game, despite it being a top-down stick shooter, which normally I hate. The enemy diversity was really cool, I loved the controls, they felt really tight and smooth, and all the side objectives didn't feel so much like inconveniences rather than great additions to the game. And then of course there were the bosses. I loved everything about the bosses in Nex Machina. I could probably just go on and on about them, make its own video, but we don't have enough time for that. There were also the really cool level 14s in each world where it pushed the view from top down into more of a third person, which I thought was a neat design choice. Even with all of my technological woes, I loved this game so much. For the rankings, I think that Nex Machina is actually going to take the top spot away from Resogun, although the choice was really tough to make. I also went ahead and updated the deaths and my total time spent on the games, which even though I was playing on the medium difficulty, I was still taking a pretty good amount of deaths here. With Nex Machina done, we're finally home. It's time to play. Returnal is a third-person shooter roguelike bullet hell developed for the PS5 in 2021 by Housemarque, but if you're watching a video on my channel, you probably already knew that. When planning out how this video would go, Returnal was the largest point of contention for me. I could have just done a speedrun and joke around saying, wow, that was the easiest game yet, or done an informational tips and tricks section at the end here when referring to the one Housemarque game I'm actually familiar with, but in the end, I decided to go with my first casual playthrough of Returnal since probably the first month this game was originally released. For this video, I ended up playing most of these games off stream. The few I did do on stream weren't great live content, and doing them off stream gave me less stress to seem like I was good at every game. Returnal is the one outlier here. I did this entire thing in one stream. My Returnal streams always do better numbers than my other games, and it was nice to talk to the Returnal community again after an extended break away from the game. This run had no speedrunning tricks besides DMJs, no abusing weapon RNG for the strongest rolls, just shooting enemies and trying out fun builds through the artifacts and malfunctions. I had such a great time, and it reminded me why I love this game so much to begin with, and why I'm so excited for Saros. At this point, you may be wondering why I'm not walking through everything I did in this run, or all the different abilities made available, or the different controls like for the previous games, and that's a pretty good question. Seeing that I already have a litany of guides and tips and tricks videos for Returnal that you can look at already, I wanted to take the time to just express my appreciation for this game specifically, and where it's brought me as far as being online. Returnal is the reason I have any form of online presence at all, probably the reason you're seeing this video or clicked on it to begin with. Returnal introduced me to the world of speedrunning, and I'm particularly lucky that the Returnal speedrunning community was full of delightful people that I can now call my friends. Housemarque put incredible care into making an incredible game. Their first game after declaring that they were moving away from the arcade-style games that they were so familiar with. Just like how this is a departure from my normal uploads of just my most recent speedrunning PBs. Without this idea, I would have never gotten to experience games like Nex Machina, Resogun, or Outland. For that, I'm just really thankful to anyone who decided to watch this long and tolerate all of my rambling. All that said, I finally wrapped up my first casual run of Returnal in 4 years, feeling a renewed sense of appreciation for the finer details of the game. This game just takes all the good parts of the games that I played previously from this developer and adds even more. The bosses are the best of any Housemarque game, the sound design, especially with the PS5 controller, is out of this world, and the gameplay loop is rewarding once you take the time to upgrade your weapons. If you somehow made it to this video and haven't played Returnal before, I cannot recommend it enough. The feeling you get when you finally take down that challenge that you've been struggling with is like none other. As far as rankings go, it's pretty obvious. Returnal is one of my favorite games ever, if not just specifically for Housemarque games, so this is obviously going to take the top spot. For my death and times, it's also a little goofy. I obviously didn't die because I'm fairly familiar with Returnal, but I did try to make the casual playthrough last a little bit, so I wouldn't take too much stock into that. All that said, I did want to include a couple bits from my run, so I'm going to include some of those clips here now. Oh my god. Wait, I actually almost died. That's crazy. We're blaming it on the weapon. I'm glad we can all agree. Let's go get another gun. Okay, I mean, not that one. Also, I mean, just because I see I have a handful of viewers sitting around, the death counter and the timer is not my Returnal death counter and timer. It's for all the Housemarque games combined. I did not die 85 times in this game. We are not freestyling. Bro, I saw this funny ass TikTok where it was like, guy that's about to ruin the party. And it's this dude like standing with the cup, and this guy over his shoulder is like, you should go in there and freestyle. He's like, nah, man. I think the girls just want to dance. And like, yeah, they want to dance to you. All right, let's go use pylon web. I'm doing my best to have a casual experience. So let's go use the pylon web. I just dropped. I mean, I feel like a disgusting human, bro. I just dropped a pylon web driver for a hollow seeker. What am I even doing here, man? Dude, I do not. It's so crazy. I mean, I haven't seen this in forever either, you know? Because this weapon does nothing, by the way. Where's my damage? The health bar's not even moving. This weapon's so bad. You're crazy. Alright, you know what? It kind of did something there. Look, man, I can admit when I was wrong. Pylon Web was not half bad there.
The first.
Submit this run to the leaderboard for fucking what category? Pyro Show Caster. I actually, genuinely, don't know the last time I used this gun. Alright, so got through 5-6 Housemarque games in under 18 hours. That's cool. Only 85 deaths. Only might be, I mean, honestly, I can't believe I died 85 times. These rankings are all obviously biased and just based on my own opinion, and also based on me maybe not getting the full proper experience with them. Would I have liked Alienation more if I had played it couch co-op instead of single player? Would I have liked Outland more if I went and got all the concept arts and got 100% in it? I don't know, but I do know that I did enjoy each of these games, so please don't be too mad at the rankings. Taking the dive to play each of these games has given me a newfound excitement for Soros. Looking towards the future, I may play some of these other Housemarque titles again, but for now I'm going to jump back into the Returnal grind and try to get one last world record. If that sounds like something you'd be interested in, I'm including my Twitch link in the description. Feel free to leave a comment on what games I missed or should play from Housemarque, what I missed in the games I did play, and then also just how bad I am in general was fine. Regardless, if you made it this far in the video, I appreciate it so deeply, and thank you for watching.